You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with creator and host, Nomad. With 20 plus years of experience in the music industry, Nomad has done just about everything to earn a living as a career musician. From being music director to celebrity artists, playing iconic arenas and stadiums, composing for film and TV, and even playing your average local club gigs, he's done it all. Nomad's mission is to empower musicians across the globe with strategies for a sustainable career while blasting stereotypes, and to bring you tried and true wisdom from his colleagues in this crazy business we call music.
On this episode of The Career Musician, we have music sync licensing agent and publisher Kristina Benson. In addition to studying piano and opera, she also served as a loan officer at a bank with her marketing background and acquired a doctorate's degree in philosophy. As if that weren't enough, she decided to open her own sync licensing agency and publishing company. As a native of Orange County, California, she is no stranger to the stage, DJing, and being a member of several indie bands in the Southern California area. The cool thing about Kristina is that she has a truly diversified background as a career musician, both in the performance side and the business side. Sit back, take notes, and enjoy this episode of the Career Musician Podcast with none other than Kristina Benson, founder of Sweet on Top, sync licensing agency and publishing company, and all-around model career musician. Welcome, Kristina Benson.
Thank you.
Have you? Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so lots to cover. I'll try to flow quickly here so I don't keep you too long. Sweet on Top, or licensing company.
And a publishing company.
Before we dive into that, because I definitely want to hit that, tell us a little bit about where you're from and how did the music bug bite you?
I'm from Orange County, and I was taking piano lessons basically my whole life. My mother was a very accomplished pianist, so I was always influenced to do that. And then when I got to college, I majored in music, but I also had a quote-unquote practical major. My practical major was related to urban planning. Then when I graduated, I actually got a job at a bank, but I was still playing in bands. I was DJing a lot. I was throwing events. I was doing promotion, but I didn't know anybody who worked in the music industry. I wasn't that far from LA. I was in Orange County, and I grew up just fine. I had everything I needed. I went to summer camp. I mean, I never wanted for anything, but I didn't grow up in a family that was in a position where I didn't have to worry about making a living, if that makes sense. I wasn't in that position. So I did have to think about how am I going to make a living? How am I going to pay for stuff? And I didn't know anybody who could make a living through music. And I didn't understand how the industry worked. I mean, in one of my first bands, I don't think we even knew about ASCAP. I don't think we even knew about BMI, any of that stuff.
Right.
Or at least I didn't, because all I did in that band was play keyboards. Maybe the guys knew, but I didn't. And then how did that change? I guess that changed because I met my now husband, and he had a magazine. He was a music journalist. And I began learning from him about, how do these bands just get covered in magazines? I thought someone would, I don't even know what I thought. I had this naive idea that someone would figure out they were good magically, and I don't know. Then I learned that there was this network of PR, and you'd pay people to talk about you, frankly. And then I kind of connected the dots that everything in the industry must sort of be like that. And then from my work in music journalism, which I kind of got into through him, I began doing A&R to licensing agencies, because I would be covering very small bands, and from playing in small punk bands myself. And then from the A&Ring to licensing agencies, I worked for one, and then I was basically running the day-to-day, and then I just started my own.
Wow. I love it. Okay.
Sorry, that was probably a longer answer than you wanted.
No, it's actually perfect. It's just a lot of stuff that I want to unpack, because you touched on a lot of cool things. So first of all, are those boxes of vinyl that I see behind you?
Oh, yeah. There's our friend made and there's more in the closet too, a lot more.
Oh,
and there's more in the garage, and there's more in the living room.
That's sick. So you are a tried and true collector and DJ then. Is that right?
Well, some of these are mine, but after I moved in with my husband, he is a far more. He's like a real collector. I mean, I like to play. I DJ with vinyl, or when I used to DJ, even before the pandemic, I'd kind of cut down the DJing. I would only DJ with vinyl, but he's he's a purist. He wants an original pressing. He won't do comps. He won't do reissues. He focuses primarily on 45s.
That's super cool. All right. And then so your mom was a classically trained piano player? Did you spend time with you learning the classical repertoire yourself?
Oh yeah, my undergraduate degree is a bachelor in music and vocal performance, and I studied opera.
Wow. Okay. Tell us more about that.
I mean, I'm very glad I did it. I learned I can read a score. I can read like a 16, 20 stave score with B flat and E flat instruments. I mean, it'll take me a minute now because I'm a little rusty, but like I can understand that. I can read that. I can read music. I'm not a great sight reader anymore at the piano because I'm out of practice, but I can sit down at the piano and play something. I'm just kind of amazed at how many artists these days cannot sit down at a piano or pick up a guitar and write a song.
That's what I was going to say. You can actually do that. And wow, that's huge. That's so...
I mean, everyone should do what works for them. But I also feel like, there's no such thing as a neutral tool. And when I was fooling around more in Ableton, like I realized I was trapped into like four measures, counts of four, everything at four, because the tool really behaves that way. And if you're picking up a guitar or picking up a piano, you're like not locked into that. You can do time signature changes. You can cut a measure short. You can cut a verse short. You can do things that those interfaces don't really encourage you to do.
You can play rubato. Yeah,
you can play rubato, which you can't even do in Ableton. You really can't do that, And I love Ableton, but I think it's important to understand that the tool is not neutral. It shapes what you are going to write.
I love that. So what's really cool is that people in the music business side of it, right, such as yourself, you are basically a publishing and licensing company, that you have a musical background. I think that's really important. So that way you understand the artists and the catalogs that you're representing on a deeper level, right? Not just from a marketing perspective, but from a musical perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I try. I hope so. I mean, I'm not.
Excuse me.
I've written and co-written some songs that have been synced, but I've kind of put the brakes on that because I don't want my artists to feel like they're competing with me. I don't think it's appropriate to like elbow my way into sessions, so I don't really do that anymore. Before the pandemic, like every so often, I'd go write with a friend of mine, just kind of for fun. Yeah. But I wanted to write for sync at least a couple times so I understood like, well, what does it look like when I get a brief? Like, how does it feel to do that? What's this experience like? So when I'm setting up co-writes, I understand what's going to happen at the co-write.
I love that. Okay, so let's dive right in. Sync, SYNC, which is for synchronization, right? Those who may not know, tell us about sync. Break it down as if the listeners, were not informed and you're about to inform them.
Well, sync is synchronization. It's synchronizing sound to a picture, and the picture can be a promo, a television show, a trailer. It can be any number of things, but really you're synchronizing music to picture. And if you don't own the music, you're synchronizing to your picture. You need to get the rights to do that.
Right.
And usually there's two sets of rights. There's the right to the recording and the right to the composition.
Thank you. Please expound. The master recording and the composition rights.
Right. So like, just as an example, Whitney Houston's version, I Will Always Love You, Dolly Parton wrote that song. So if I wanted Whitney Houston's version of that song in The Bodyguard, I would need Whitney Houston's permission, although that probably was a work for hire, but whatever. I would need Whitney Houston's, well, maybe not. She was a big star, but whatever. I would need Whitney Houston's permission for the recording, and then I would need Dolly Parton's permission for the composition.
Right. And let's be clear that when you say Whitney's and Dolly's permission, obviously you're not going to call Whitney and Dolly on the phone. By the way, rest in peace, Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're going to call their representatives,
or their publisher in the case of Dolly. Thank you.
So yeah, please expound on that for the listeners.
So Dolly is maybe not the best example because she's kind of a powerhouse, but let's say Dolly was, so Dolly has someone publish her songs. I'm not sure who her publisher is, but let's say it's Warner. You would call Warner Music and say, hey, we want to use I Will Always Love You and The Bodyguard. And Warner is her publisher. Warner is supposed to safeguard her rights. They're supposed to collect income for her worldwide. They're supposed to issue licenses, both mechanical licenses and synchronization licenses. And in her case, they probably have to ask permission. So they would contact she probably has a huge team. So they'd contact whoever is on her team and then figure that out. Right. But both Whitney and Dolly are very big stars, or Whitney was a really big star. In that case, probably they got paid the same. But let's say I covered that song. My recording is not going to be considered as valuable as Dolly's work writing the song. She's way more famous than I probably will ever be. So I will probably get paid less.
Right. Well, let's talk about that, because what happens in the sync licensing world is it can be a lucrative avenue for musicians to, pursue, especially independent artists. Mm-hmm. And the reason is what you just mentioned, because again, in today's standards, or maybe a couple of years ago standards, Imagine Dragons, after they become Imagine Dragons and they blew up, they're going to command a lot bigger licensing fee than before, when they were just a little indie band, right? Mm-hmm. However, the little indie bands and little indie artists can still get some decent deals, right?
Yeah, they can get some decent deals. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to be aware of the fact that there is a lot of content, but there's also a lot of music, and things have changed since, I'd say really since Spotify. You're not just competing with the other indie artists of today. You're competing with every indie artist that ever was.
Wow.
Right? Like I have an artist named Lazy Smoke from the 60s, and they're independent. They're not published. They're one stop. Okay. Right? So you're in competition with them. You're in competition with bands from 10 years ago, because time and space has really been collapsed.
Okay, now you just used another term, if you don't mind breaking one stop down. And when you say that, exactly what are the...
I feel like one stop is can be misunderstood. I mean, one stop means that you control all the rights. You control the master, you control the publishing. Now, if you and I got together and wrote a song, aside from the fact that I have a licensing agency, unless I got a piece of paper from you giving me permission to relay approval on your behalf for sync rights, or making those, not even relay approval, give approval on your behalf,
right?
it wouldn't be one stop.
Right.
It's really two stop, which is okay. And I also think that there's a fixation on one stop these days. Everything has to be one stop. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. I think some of it is because we have an influx of newer artists who don't really know, or inexperienced, they don't really know a lot. And one stop is an easy way to explain to them how they need to be marketable. And I think that's fair. And so they often work together. They often are unpublished. They all work together. And so it's just easier. We're one stop. Sometimes they think they are, but they're not, because they'll show me splits like, I'm allowed to speak for sync opportunities. And I'm like, well, an opportunity isn't a license, right? But the other thing is, sometimes I think they don't really understand. I think sometimes they're afraid. They're like, well, what if there's a publisher? Like the publisher will screw things up. The publisher is a wild card. What if you're with an agency? There is something to that. But like, if you know who you're working with, I think that it can be okay. I mean, you can go on my website and look at tons of placements that I got where there's other publishers involved, and it was fine.
It was fine.
You just have to know, like, who is it? Who is the other party?
Right.
Who do you contact to clear it? What is that person like?
And that's the legwork that you have to do.
Mm-hmm. So you do. I mean, you do have to do more legwork if it's not one stop.
Right.
You do.
Right.
And the other reason why I think one stop is something people fixate on is maybe they want all of the commission. If you're an agency, you want all the commission for generating the opportunity, because agencies work on commission. But at the same time, like there's a writer named Daniel Ellsworth at Terrorbird, and I like to set up my writers with him because he syncs well. He's great to work with, and sometimes Terrorbird generates the opportunity. Sometimes sometimes we do, and one hand washes the other. Like when I generate the opportunity, then sure, I give up in quotes half the commission because they commission on their half. But then when they generate the opportunity, guess what? Like it works the other way.
Vice versa, you benefit. Absolutely. Yeah. The symbiotic relationship, which
So it can be nice to have a partner. I think it can be nice to have a partner and have things to stop if you know that the other agency is going to pull their weight.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you have a trusted relationship there, which musicians are used to collaborating. We thrive on collaborations, right? So you're taking that collaborative experience mindset and applying it on the business side as well. Yeah, which is brilliant, in my opinion. I always think of bands back in the day, whether it's the Beatles or Earth, Wind and Fire. Imagine if it was just one person doing all the writing and playing. It would not be what it is today, right?
Right. They all had teams too that would push out their music and stuff.
That's right. Okay, so rewinding a little bit, you mentioned earlier you were in some punk bands and stuff, and you were playing keys. And you're like, man, I don't even know if I knew what a PRO was.
I don't think I did. I really don't.
I love that. And first of all, I love the vulnerability to admit that. I don't care what stage you are in your career. So if there's anybody listening who doesn't know, it's okay. The point is, now you know, we're going to point you in the right direction to go do some research. I hear a lot of people refer to it as a pro. Oh, what's your pro? Well, sure, you could say that, but it's really a PRO, Performing Rights Organization. So please, expound on that for us.
So when you write a song, let's say, I wrote a song and I needed to register it on my PRO. I am CSAC. They're called Performance Rights Organization, and they're supposed to help you collect money. And they're supposed to also serve as proof of ownership of the song. So I wrote a song with my friend Ethan, and I went to CSAC. He is ASCAP. He went to ASCAP, and we each registered our respective portions of the song. So first, it's important to note that if you're ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, you can all collaborate together, and it's okay. Yeah. I could collaborate with a SOCAN writer, SOCAN being from Canada, or with SAIE, who's Spanish, or with whoever. It doesn't matter. And then you register the song, and you're like, why would I do that? Well, because when your song, not your recording, your song plays on television, you get more money later. Pretty cool, right?
It's your back end, yeah.
It takes a while, 6 months to a year. Later, you get money from those uses. Now, you do get money from Netflix, from Spotify, but it's really very little, and that's something that really does need to change. I think my Spotify, I'm a publisher, so I get these statements that are so long they crash my computer, because it's got, my Excel kept crashing last time, and I was like, what is going on? Because it was, I think, 30,000 rows long, my publisher statement. But I had one writer who had a 30,000 row statement from all the Spotify stuff, and it was $150. You barely get anything off Spotify. It's something's really got to be done about that, or or Hulu. You really don't get very much back end money from those services. Right.
So, okay. First, I want to explain the difference the concept that countries have their own PROs, right? So you mentioned SOCAN from Canada, and the Spanish. There's actually there's probably hundreds of PROs around the world, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's PRS in the UK. There's an Italian one whose name I forget.
Yeah, there's one I can't remember.
SACEM is French.
Yeah, okay.
The African countries. I work with an African label, and I believe there are some African PROs, but they're working on kind of trying to modernize their PRO stuff. Oh, Australia has their own PRO.
There you go. So no matter where you live, it's important that you get signed up with one, right?
Yep.
I just had a question the other day. I was doing a webinar for the Career Musician, and we were talking about building your catalog. And one of the composers asked, if I register my song with my PRO, do I have to apply for a copyright?
You really should, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you with a straight face that everybody does. You really should.
Right. Because, he brought up the point. He's like, well, look, if I have 200 songs or cues in my catalog, that's expensive if I have to.
No, I think you could just call them an album and apply for it all at once, though, can't you?
A body of work.
Yeah, a body of work, and do it all at once.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you really should. You should.
You should at the end of the day, but
a lot of people don't. I mean, I think that, an IP lawyer would really be able to say for sure if I'm right, but I believe there's an implied copyright when you create it.
Right.
I don't think the piece of paper has a magical power that not having the piece of, I mean, it's good to have it, but like,
yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. I had a situation where there was some confusion over whether or not a song I wrote was a work for hire or not. I didn't register the song. I know, very bad. And I just asked the company to produce evidence. I was like, can you show me where I signed anything saying that it was work for hire?
Wow.
And they could not. I think it was an honest mistake. So that was cool. I was like, I don't have this as a work for hire. Can you show me where I signed something? And not only that, here are screenshots of my registering it in my name. Here's a license from before. Where it was signed.
Yeah, you caught them. You caught them in their own.
I do think it was an honest mistake. I think it was someone new whose records. I really do think it was an honest mistake. Okay. But it wasn't. They weren't like, you don't have the copyright. No. Gotcha. Right. Yeah. I mean, and even if it was not an honest mistake, me not having that copyright registration really wouldn't have been dispositive.
Right. Okay. Now break that down for us. The work for hire, because boy, that seems to be a misunderstood term oftentimes.
When you're working in a work for hire basis, that entity or person or organization is really purchasing all your rights to those songs. You can still register. You still generally get credit as the writer. Like on the PRO, you will have written it. They generally extend that courtesy. But let's say Chase Bank is asking you to do a work for hire. You will be the writer. Chase Bank often will be the publisher, and they will own the master.
Right. Now, does that mean as a writer, as a composer, are you going to get back-end royalties on that work for hire?
On your writer's side.
Only on the writer's side. Right. And that's the other thing that I think everybody really needs to understand. There's two sides of the pie. How, again, learning all this, obviously it's been years since you've learned it, but how do you break it down for easy ingestion?
Usually I draw a circle and then
I do the same thing. Yeah.
Basically you'll get two checks. One, if you're ASCAP, you look at it as two checks, one check for your writer and one side for your publisher. And it's really to protect you. So like, let's say you have a publisher and you have a check for $100 and your publisher gives you a check for $80, then your publisher is charging you 20%.
That's right.
That's what, right? So it's to show you how much of your earnings that your publisher is taking from you.
Now, okay, let's take that information and translate it to Sweet on Top. When you decided to open your own publishing company, Sweet on Top, what was the impetus there? Were you just getting so many deals? You're like, oh shoot, I better start working deals in that I can collect my own publishing, or how did that all? That's
part of it. The other part is like when I was in my old agency, we would really grow with artists. We would give them briefs. We would work with them to become more syncable if that's what they wanted, and then they'd get syncs, and then like Cobalt would sign them. Right. And I'd be like, I'm really happy for the artist, but now I just did A&R for Cobalt. That's not cool. So then I was like, okay, so that's not cool. So then I was like, well, if we're going to be working with artists to help them, if we're going to be growing with them, then it's only fair that we publish them. So we do have a couple different deals. We have one deal where if it's like, if we send you a brief, we publish that song, which I think is fair. If we put you together and introduce you to a writer and you guys write stuff, we publish the first few songs that come out of your collaboration, which I again think is fair. You guys could go off into the sunset and be the next Chinachap or the next Matrix or the next Lennon McCartney. And I'd hope to work together, but you'd have no obligation to do so. We just take the first few songs. And then if someone wants like, hey, I have an album, we work the album, then we'll publish the album. I mean, we do have full catalog deals, but no one needs to do that. We have other options for you.
Okay. Wow. That's awesome. Tell us more about Sweet on Top.
We founded it I filed the corporate paperwork and everything in late 2017, but we opened it in early 2018. And we've grown a lot. We represent, let me look at my very aggressive email signature so I can tell you what we represent.
I like that.
We have quite a few vintage labels, which I'm really proud of. Like Ace Records is one of the best vintage labels in the world. They're a British label. We've got another vintage label called Jackpot. We just signed Hindsight Records. We have a ton of Latin, actually, and Latin electronic. We do have some talented writers. We have a Scottish label called Holy Smokes Record. We just signed Levitation Records out of Austin, who I really love. MRC, which is Authentic Vintage African. I mean, I think the hardest part of starting Sweet on Top was you want searches because you need placements to sign people, but then if you like, it's just like this chicken and egg thing.
Yes.
So I had to sign people that trusted me, and then be like, okay, wait there, just wait. I'm gonna go get searches now, and then go get the searches. So that, to me, that was the hardest part.
Well, well, how the hell do you do it? Because it seems like a mind-boggling, task.
Well, let me tell you, I have a PhD from UCLA, and this was harder.
Wow.
This was harder.
Okay, Eric, put on the brakes. A PhD from UCLA. How did you skip over that?
Oh, I mean, when I stopped working for the bank, I was like, I was still playing in bands. I was still promoting. I was still doing music stuff. And I think I was doing some music journalism. And I was like, I still didn't understand like how I would make a living in the music industry. I just didn't see how I would get a foothold. So I went back to school, and I went to UCLA for my PhD in philosophy. And then it was while I was there working. I mean, you're not supposed to work off campus when you're getting a doctorate, but the stipend just wasn't enough. And my committee was certainly not going to pay any student loans I took out. So I chose to work off campus, and my work was often in the music industry, DJing, freelance journalism,
wow.
Working for an events production company. And that's how I transitioned out of academia into music industry stuff.
Wow. Okay. I love how you just said that. You're like, yeah, this is harder than studying for my PhD.
Opening the company absolutely was harder than my PhD. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. And you were working for another licensing house before you opened this.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't recommend doing this because we work with the biggest companies on the planet. We work with Amazon, Apple, Universal Music, like AT&T, Time Warner / HBO. Like these are the biggest companies on the planet.
Right.
You cannot ask for forgiveness instead of permission.
Ah.
You will get fucked over. Excuse my language. It will be a bad, like you've got to know what you are doing.
Yeah, you'll get burned and you'll get blacklisted. You never work again, right? You'll never get the calls.
Unfortunately, I kind of wish it worked that way sometimes because you do see people rise to the top who I wonder if their relationships are relationships are really important.
Yeah.
But I'll put it this way, probably it'll be okay, but then it's okay until it's not. And that's I can't really talk about the specific situations that I've seen happen, but like from what I've seen, you know what, probably it's okay, but it'll be okay until it's not if you don't run a tight ship.
You're shooting yourself in the foot, basically.
Like and you do have to know me. This is really a sales job. It is. It's a sales job, but like any sales job, you have to know your product, and my product is music. So I have to know my catalog. I have to know what my supervisors will need. I have to know my clients, but it is a sales job. And it's also a law job because I read licenses. I negotiate licenses. It's all legal stuff. License agreements are pretty easy. If I was doing sync-only agreements with artists, those are easy. But like publishing agreements are a little challenging. I do have to loop in my lawyer sometimes and ask him for help with publishing agreements.
Sure.
You have to have a lot of skill sets to do this. You have to be able to negotiate.
Right.
You have to also deal with artists who are sometimes I think some of them have been burnt by bad deals. So sometimes I think they are fearful, but they don't know what they're fearful of. So you have to, some of them don't know. Some of the labels I've signed have never worked in sync. I just signed MoFunk. I love this label so much, but they don't really have a lot of experience with sync.
Right.
So you have to be able to explain things to people who, while very talented and extremely smart, just don't have experience in this area.
Right. Right. I'll never forget my first sync deal years ago in the early 2000s. with the company, I can't remember the name of the company. Anyway, I remember calling my representative, or calling or emailing, and I would say, "Hey, any bites yet?" And he just got back to me. He's like, "Well, these things take time," and I'm like, "Okay, well, how much time?"
A lot of time.
I was so naive. I just, I was asking all the questions.
No, they take a lot of time. I mean, that's the other thing, is that it can be lucrative. It can be, but I think it's also important to realize that there's a lot of content out there, and that includes music. So, okay, I'll give you an example. Someone just reached out to me for a quote request for something I pitched in, I think, June of 2018.
Wow. Yeah. They just wanted a quote after 2.5 years. Wow. Mm-hmm. Look at that. So, I always say, again, one of the premises here, the career musician, is about the long game. I feel if you're in music for a living, it's not a conscious choice. We were chosen for this. We don't choose to go into it because everybody knows it's hellacious. It's mind-boggling to try to make a living, as you say. Mm-hmm. How does an artist or a band play the long game in sync licensing effectively?
I would say there's a lot of people making music for sync right now. There's kind of, I almost want to say there's a bubble of people making music for sync.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be making sync songs, you better be really, really, really good at it, because the day when you could just clap and whistle over a ukulele a little bit and get $50,000, those are gone. That's right. So you better be really good at that. If you're making what I call sync music. And if you're not making sync music, you can still make music and get synced, but I would make sure you have a strong artist identity. And you can still have that strong artist identity and write sync friendly songs. You really can.
I love that. It's a very it's a delicate balance, but it can be done. I agree. Yeah,
absolutely. And when I worked on the coordinator side for a little bit, like for a supervisor right before the agency opened, and there was some overlap there, and I still sometimes help her out if she's super slammed. They listen to 1,000 songs a day. So you've got to think, how are you going to, and really most of them are very, very good. So you can't be in that, what I call the mushy middle 80%. You can't be in that 80%. You've got to stand out somehow, and you got to stand out. You got to let your personality, what makes this song yours? Why do they need your swagger song versus someone else's?
Right.
Because they all sound the same, honestly. You got to make yours stand out. I'm Kristina Benson from Sweet on Top, and you're listening to Career Musician.
Help us continue to provide you with new and engaging content by getting our ratings up. Please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Go behind the scenes with host Nomad to gain inside knowledge of entertainment business from the world's leading musicians, artists, producers, managers, and more.
I love it. You said a couple things. I do remember the whole movement of the ukulele hand clap era, where that's all you heard. Mm-hmm. Talk about that. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you see trends that shift and move, and they come and go.
Right now, okay, there was a while when I was getting Uptown Funk 1 million times a day. What is it now? I would say those types of Uptown Funk songs are very, they're kind of timeless. If you can do that, if you're really good at that and that's your thing and you're good at it, then I would stick with it. But it's right now, actually, it's hard for me to put my finger on a specific sound. It's really more about the lyrics.
Yeah. And then also there was a moment where everybody was requesting dark covers, quote unquote.
Oh, geez, those are still going. I mean, those are still going. Those are tough to land. I'm not going to say, yes, have independent artists landed dark cover deals, totally. But often trailer houses will, they want, for example, Dua Lipa doing a dark cover, right? They often want to arrange the cover with someone famous because they're trying to sell a movie.
Right.
That people spent tens of $millions to make. And so, I have friends at trailer houses with extremely they have good taste in music, and they like weird, obscure stuff, and they want to put it in trailers. And there is a time for that, but sometimes with these big blockbusters, like no one wants to take a chance. They want something that like everyone likes, everyone knows.
It's got to be the sure bet, right? I mean,
they want a sure bet. And I'm generalizing here, just big disclaimer. This is a generalization. It is generally true, which means there are exceptions.
But that's part of the fabric of what Hollywood is built on. If you just, we could talk about that for days with actors, right? So they go for the sure thing.
Yeah. I mean, also before the pandemic, when like friends of mine from the indie bands and stuff that I used to play in and the bands I go see express interest in sync and want to write for sync, the first thing I tell them to do is like go to the mall. And I tell them not like Century City, like go to the mall in Orange County. I'm from Orange County, so it's okay. Go to the mall in Orange County or the Valley, and I live in the Valley now. Go to the mall in Orange County or the Valley, or better yet, Riverside, and just go sit in the food court and like look at who's here, look at what they're buying, look at like just sort of drink in the atmosphere, because that is who you are making music for. You're not making music for the people at the Echo on a Monday night. Like that's not who your audience is here. You're not making music for people who go to the Smell. That's not who the audience is.
I love that. That's so true. And it's an interesting dichotomy. If you're a tried and true artist to the core, and you do have that intellectual side and that philosophical side, this can be a little bit of a wrestling match within your own,
I mean, I have a friend who's like an artist to the core, and he can be so good at sync songs because his personality, like his songs are going to stand out. Like his personality is in those songs. They're going to stand out. But I really got to watch his lyrics because he'll try really hard, but there's just always something weird in there. But I mean, so I would say like a great collaboration for sync is to find like a weird artist type who wants to do this and put them with like a straight down the middle sync person, because you'll get that like sync friendly lyrics, the sync friendly production, but with that kind of like twist,
That's beautiful. That's incredible. I love that. Hey, do you remember when I always say this, but maybe you'll disagree. I don't know. Do you remember when music supervisors became the new rock stars?
Oh, actually, there's a young woman at USC who is writing her dissertation on that. She interviewed me for her dissertation. Okay,
good. So I'm glad I'm not alone. Yeah. So talk about that. Boy, that was an interesting turn in the industry, wasn't it?
I mean, I feel like I forget what her thesis is. I feel like I think she's arguing that like when the labels got very fragmented due to Spotify. Right. Like the gatekeeper now is the algorithm in Spotify. Like that does have a gatekeeping function, but that's a lot less tangible than the gatekeeping function that labels used to provide. And like obviously there are labels in Instagram, but the branding of that is a lot less identifiable. So supervisors provide that gatekeeping and sort of branding function. That I think that's what she's arguing. I have to look back at what we talked about. Okay. I mean, that I think that was her argument. I think it's a good argument that they provide like almost like a gatekeeping function.
Right. It's like they're replacing A&R.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they are A&R.
They're embodying that. Yes.
They're really like almost like unpaid A&R for labels, because like I love Lizzo, but if you told me that some of her songs were written for sync, I would totally believe you. I mean, doesn't it sound? Yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds like it was written for sync, and like sync is more and more a consideration for labels. Right. I mean, I have a band that I rep that they're a sync band. They're formed to write for sync, and they've gotten so successful for sync that they're now getting scouted by major labels who want to turn them into a real band.
Wow. So that's the reverse progression. Mm-hmm. That. Wow. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. All right. So how do you, let's see. You are a sync licensing company, and you represent all these artists, bands, catalogs, and labels.
And writers.
Writers, because especially with the publishing side. Mm-hmm. All of these independent artists want to get their songs placed. What do you tell them? Because let's face it, trying to get your music on the desk of a supervisor almost virtually impossible these days.
No, it's not impossible. I do it. I mean, I do it every day. It's my job. But like,
no, but you do it as a company. But I'm saying for the independent artist. So what do you recommend? Independent
artists absolutely need to find a bona fide sync agency or publisher. Right. And I don't mean like their friend who's an artist who is now an agency because they don't want to pay commission anymore. I don't mean like cold emailing supervisors. I mean like an actual supervising, an actual agency. That's
right. And I think that's very important for people to hear because there's so much content out there. Like you said, it's surplus, right? The market is oversaturated.
And really, not only that, like this is music to a large extent is fungible. I mean, can you replace Beyonce with Sabbath? No. But can you replace Sabbath with AC/DC? Iron Maiden? Rat? Maybe.
Right.
So, I mean, it's fungible, especially at the indie artist level. Like maybe you can't really replace Black Sabbath with Rat because Iron Man has that sound and you want Iron Man. But if you're an indie artist and nobody knows who you are, like...
Totally replaceable.
You are replaceable.
I love that. I always used to say that, even on a gig. Like, I don't know how much you know about me, but I was the music director for Babyface for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I used to preach that to the band all the time because I was constantly, vetting new band members and putting together new iterations of the band based on what the artist wanted, okay? And that would be my first thing. Listen, I'm so glad you're here. We're excited to have you, but just know at the end of the day, you are replaceable. Oh, by the way, I'm speaking to myself because I'm replaceable.
I mean, even Babyface is far less replaceable.
Exactly, because he has a sound, an identity, yeah.
Yeah, but like there's a point, I mean, do supervisors get everything they want all the time? No, and they have to find a way to replace Dua Lipa. They have to find a replace, Lizzo, and they do it. It's not like they're like, well, I guess we can't air this show now because we can't get Lizzo. Like they replace it.
Right. Hell no. The show must go on regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this has been great. So, okay, do you have, if you don't mind, could you give us a peer into the day in the life of Kristina Benson and Sweden? What is obviously you have some kind of a schedule or something. How do you juggle all this? It just seems like a lot.
So I wake up, I'm married to someone who helps me and has to help me. So that's pretty cool. I have that going for me. But I usually wake up early because I have a lot of British clients and I don't need to talk to them every day, but I talk to them a lot. So I'll usually wake up at like 7 and then I have this bad habit of looking at my emails on my phone in bed before I'm ready to get up. And then I'll usually see something and forget about it until like way later, which I shouldn't do. So I'll just kind of stare at my emails and my phone and then finally I'll get up. And then usually immediately I'll email the British people. There'll be a quote request. There'll be, do you have the wave for this? Hey, I saw on your Instagram that you have an album coming out soon. Do you want to send it to me now so I can push it? Like I'll just try to check in with British people.
Very cool.
Then I look at trade magazines, just sort of while I'm drinking coffee and seeing what shows are coming, like what's been greenlit. Okay. Then I'll usually have searches from the day before that I have to do. So I'll do my searches. I will, and the days are really fluid. I mean, some days I'll have lots of searches. Some days I'll have fewer searches. Some days I'll be able to. My husband is extremely good at inputting our vintage catalog. I really rely on him for that. He's great on our vintage searches, but the contemporary stuff I usually do. So if there's contemporary stuff to intake, I try to have calls with supervisors, like I used to do meetings, but now Zoom meetings with supervisors. Yeah. Before this huge spike in virus stuff, I would try to do distance walks with supervisors. So I might do that. It's pretty fluid.
Distance walks?
Well, yeah, because, it's a pandemic.
Yeah,
so I would
fun. Yeah.
I'll do let's do a distance walk in Griffith Park.
Oh, that's cool. Why not? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it gives you, it gives you a whole nother set of stimuli to be, intrigued with being outside, right?
Usually they want to stroll, but I have one supervisor who's like, okay. And she was like, we hiked all the way to the Griffith Observatory. It was really hard. It was good though.
Wow. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Hey, do you have a mantra that you've relied on, over time when things, can get pretty hectic?
No.
No.
No. No.
Okay. No. But you have a very good handle on how to frame all of this. Okay. You have it framed very well just from this conversation. Do you find that your background in philosophy helps you at all? Or do you feel like you tap into that at all? Or?
Oh no, my PhD is totally useless. I mean, okay, here's where it's not useless. I mean, to do a dissertation, I had to interview 100 people. I had to read, oh my God, I had to read so many books. I had to learn how to speak Arabic, which I've forgotten how to do. Oh, and Persian, which sadly I've forgotten. I really regret letting my Persian go, but whatever. I had to learn how to manage projects, a project for a long period of time, while also like a long-term project, while at the same time teaching undergraduates and dealing with them, which helps me with artists, dealing with them. And, some of them were having tough times. Some of them needed more attention than others. So that's, I guess, where the PhD helped me, is with project management and with dealing with the artists. Also, I was an artist. So, I mean, there's that.
You still are an artist. Like, once an artist, always an artist, in my opinion.
I feel like I was more like a musician than an artist,
Okay. Well,
if that makes sense. And then the other thing actually that's helped me the most is my sales background, because when I said I worked for a bank, I was really a loan officer. So I was pushing loans. Wow. That's really what's helped me the most, is my sales background.
Really? That's so cool to know, because over the past 10 years or so, I've realized being a professional musician artist these days is all about marketing.
This is a sales job.
So
this
it is.
A sales job, 100%. And so if you're an artist, that's why I say you really need to get a licensing agent or a publisher, because you should not be in sales as an artist. You should be an artist. An artist should not be you need to maintain your persona as an artist. You need to be focusing. I mean, like I actually have a very, very talented top liner who he's really proactive about getting opportunities, which is great. But then sometimes he'll be like, okay, I'm going to email this guy, and this guy. And I'll be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I email those people all day. Do you want to switch? Like, do you want me to sing the songs and you do the emails? We can, but I think we'll be a lot more successful if you leave me to the emails.
Right.
And you do the songs.
All right. That makes perfect sense. But also, like you said, I think all of your background helps you in dealing with artists, because let's face it, artists are, a lot emotions on the sleeve, the heart on the sleeve, It could be a very challenging aspect of the job. No?
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, have I ever had a challenge? I don't think so. Like my old agency, she used to get really nervous about, I think she had a bad experience with artists once. She used to get a little nervous about it, but I don't know. I've been in bands my whole life. It's fine. I just think that a lot of the artists that I deal with, not a lot, some of the artists that need the most attention have had experiences where they have been burned and they worry about it, which is understandable.
That makes sense. How do you define success? I mean, look, from the outside, I view you as extremely successful. Love how you started your own company, that proactive initiative. How do you define success?
How do I define success? I guess it just sort of depends on the day. Like some days I feel really successful. I'm like, damn, I'm doing really good. And then some days I'm like, oh my God, that show is on the air and I don't have a song in it. I can't believe it. It just really depends on what day you catch me.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. When Narcos came out, I felt like they were putting a stake through my heart. I'm like, how can I not have a song in Narcos?
The worst is if it's my friend supervising it and I'll be having lunch with them and I'll be looking at them and I'll be thinking, what the fuck, dude?
What? Yeah, what?
What the fuck is it? I have an electronic catalog.
No, let's talk about that. Do you voice that? What do you do in those circumstances? Depends on the relationship, right?
It really depends on the relationship.
Yeah.
It really depends on the relationship. Usually I don't, it's hard. It just depends on the relationship.
No. Yeah.
You can't be like, I feel uncomfortable being like, I mean, that already happened. If it's on TV, it already happened. And trying to make someone feel bad and I don't know. I wasn't there. Like when I was a supervisor, sometimes we had no control. Sometimes I wasn't a supervisor, to be clear. I was a coordinator. But sometimes we had no control. The director would be like, you will be putting this in the ads. That was it. So I just don't know.
Gotcha.
What I do try to do is then I'll be more proactive. I'll be like, well, if she couldn't come to me or felt like I didn't have what she needed, why is that? How can I be better about communicating that I'll have something she needs or he needs?
Yeah, being able to look down the trail further, right?
Mm-hmm.
In advance, yeah. Have you had, well, I'm sure you had, a pinch yourself moment? Perhaps there's many, but is there one that stands out where you're just like, oh, wow, I can't believe that happened. That was super cool.
Well, at my old agency, I worked with, I was the agent who worked with the Violent Femmes.
Yeah.
And I put together a show that they played an agency showcase that I put together. Like, I think they routed their tour around the showcase, and I put it together with Susan from Hum. She worked at Hum at the time, and she emailed me. She was like, do you think they do it? And I was like, I don't know. Never hurts to ask.
That's cool.
So that was super cool. And then what else? I mean, just when I watch TV and like there's a song that I put on there, like that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Or like if I see a film and there's credits and I'm like, that's my company, like that's still pretty cool.
That's got to be awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, first of all, Kristina, so much beautiful information here. Thank you. But, as we come near to a close, words of wisdom and or advice on how an independent artist can reach out to agencies like yourself.
I would do a little bit of research, and I would look at agencies and see, well, I mean, first of all, I would be like, I first think we should take a step back and be like, I think artists really need to ask themselves what they want. Do you want to be a sync artist? Do you want to be an artist who writes for sync? Do you want to be an artist and that's what you want? And if you get some syncs, that's okay. Like, what do you want? I think that's an important sort of conversation to have with yourself, because being an artist who writes for sync, being an artist who syncs, being a sync writer, like these are all very different things, and being real honest with yourself about what you want and what you are will help you. I think it's also important to be realistic. There are a lot of people making a lot of money off sync right now. But I think there's also a lot of people making a lot of money off what I call it pan selling, because the people in the gold rush who made the most money weren't the people panning for gold. It was the people selling them the pans. So I would say beware of pan selling. There are some ethical pan sellers out there who do teach a lot of good stuff. They teach you how to write for sync. They teach you about protecting your rights. But I would be wary. I would just think carefully about like who you're giving your money to and what they're promising.
I love that you mentioned that. Those pan sellers who might be asking for some hefty bread up front. I always recommend to steer clear of them. Like I've had an instance where somebody said, look, if you pay me $1,500, I'll shop your catalog for 3 months.
I would put that in a different category than pan selling. I mean, there are people, like the norm in agencies, like in licensing agencies, is to work on commission. We can talk about whether that's fair. Like PR companies don't work on commission. Maybe that's fair, maybe that's not. That is a norm. And there are agencies who do work on a, what's it called? You contract them by the month.
Right.
Some do, and there's some reputable companies that do. I would just ask questions about if it's recoupable. To me, pan selling is more like, I will teach you how to write for sync, and if I like the songs that you sync, then I will publish it or something like that. Because then you're paying someone to publish your songs. Right.
That makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
To me, that's the pan selling. The pan selling to me isn't like, I will pitch your songs on a contract basis, because I do know people I do know of ethical and good people who do that. Although, to be clear, that is not the norm. It is a commission, primarily commission.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Like I said, this has been very informative. And, listeners out there, you can go to sweetontop.com and find all of Kristina's information right there. Your socials, is there anything else you want to mention?
I would just say also, when you're reaching out to an agency, be clear about your rights. Be like, hey, I have the master, I have the publishing. This is an album. The other thing is that, like at my old agency, we wouldn't take music if it had been released.
Okay.
I'm a little bit more flexible about that because my catalog, this agency had been in business for 10 years. They had a deeper catalog and they could look for ways to exclude. Also, if someone has an amazing project, that said, to be clear, once a song is released for the purposes of sync, you do have sort of like a ticking clock on it. When I get searches for TV, for example, they want songs that are new. And unfortunately, new in 2020 means released in the last 6 months.
Ah, wow. Interesting. So okay. Yeah, that could be a delicate balance too, then, figuring out releases for all of the different artists that you're working with.
They're supposed to tell me. They're supposed to tell me when they release their songs.
So. Call me or shoot me an email. Hey, we're doing this. Yeah. Okay.
The other thing is to think about, there are a lot of artists who want non-exclusive deals only, which we used to do. We're getting away from that now. I would think about, like, if you don't trust someone do you trust someone to work your music or don't you? If you do, then why don't you want to work with them exclusively?
Yes.
The other thing is, you're right. The other thing is, it just was creating too many problems. Like someone would get, someone would have an agency that got them in a car commercial. And the car commercial would now be exclusive in the automotive category. And then they'd forget to tell us. And then we'd get them a car ad, but then they couldn't do it because of this thing they forgot to tell us. And I'm just like, I can't deal with this.
Wow. But in essence, that is the definition of an agent. You typically work with one agent and you're exclusive. And that's what
an agency is. Or the other thing that would happen is that an artist would say, you know what, I'm going to move these songs to exclusive. And I'd be like, well, you signed a deal with me with a 3-year term. And like, I don't want to be unfriendly to artists, but a deal is a deal. And you sign a deal, and that's the deal. So like, that's started happening too much. And I'm like, we're not. And not only that, then we move to now, if it's a single artist, if you're not if we're taking a whole label, then we'll do sync only. But otherwise, if you're an artist, we've got to admin your publishing on a release, because then we avoid situations where like it's a big magical surprise that you got something that we can't pitch you for now and we didn't hear about it, or it's better because we work closer together. I can send you briefs. I can help you develop your writing for sync or not for sync. I can pair you with top liners. I feel like we can be more hands-on together.
I love that. Look, you're drawing a line in the sand. You're setting the benchmark. And in essence, you're teaching the artists that work with you how the business works. And I think that's a good thing. Like I said, I think there's not enough musicians and artists who understand how it works. Well, this is how it works. I love it. Yeah,
like you sign it. I do try to be cool when people, if I haven't been pitching the song that much and someone wants to pull it, and this, by the way, this is all stuff that's grandfathered in. We no longer do not exclusive. But if someone asks me like, hey, you know what, I'm pulling this song, it's now going to be exclusive with someone else. If we haven't really pitched it a lot, then, we'll figure something out. But if it's something I've been pitching a ton, like you signed a deal and that deal says I can keep pitching it. So I don't know what we're going to,
Right.
But anyway, yes, at some point you gotta draw a line. You gotta be, a deal's a deal. I remember when I was at my old agency, one of the people I worked with, she's like, I swear in music industry, people think that contracts are just decoration. What is this, wallpaper?
You can make origami out of your contracts?
Yeah, I'm like, it's not origami, you guys. It's a PDF, first of all.
Oh, that is hilarious. I love that. Yeah. Wow. Well, there's so many of those in the music business. How about, people just don't respond. Like, well,
yeah, that's the thing. Prepare yourself for lots of disappointment if you want to do this.
Right?
Yeah. What happened the other day? I emailed somebody about something. It was like my friend, and they didn't. What was it? It was something. I emailed someone, and they didn't get back to me about something. And I was like, "But this is my friend. Why are they doing that?" My husband goes, "Aren't you used to people shitting all over you by now?" It was like, well, not that much, not those people,
Not that particular person.
not that guy, other people.
I love it. As a New Yorker, I always give my friends a hard time. Like, what's the matter? The phone don't work for you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So just, and to be clear, like I get so many emails every day. When I was on the supervisor side, it was 10 times as many emails. So if people don't get back to you, it's just like, there's a point where you just can't get back to everybody, unfortunately.
That's a good question. If you don't mind, real quick, how much is too much when it comes to follow up? And 'cause I kind of try to adhere to the 3 strikes rule. Like if you've reached out 3 times and you're not getting anything, then lay off the gas. I mean, what do you think? What's your?
That sounds like a good rule. I would say it's more frequency. Like, don't reach out to someone every day, but like, hey, every month you might do. I mean, you just don't know. Like, there's an artist who reached out to me the 4th time, and the first 3 times I didn't. It's not like I had a problem or didn't want. I was inundated with emails, or I looked at it on my phone where I was half asleep, or I didn't know. I would just say, think about the frequency. Like, are you bugging crap out of this person every day? Maybe don't do that.
That's smart. Yeah. That's absolutely smart. Are you ready for some rapid fire?
Okay, let's do some rapid fire.
All right, here we go. Favorite decade of music?
60s.
Last concert you attended? Not worked. You just attended.
Oh God, I think that was they're my friend, but I also rep their band. So it's kind of work and play. I think the last concert I went to was my friend's band, Uzel's, I think, before all this happened.
Okay. Your friends would say you are?
Smart-ish. Probably smart, yeah.
I agree with that. Hidden talents?
Hidden talents? I have a bird, and I'm the only person whose finger he'll step on. So my friends say I'm a bird wizard. That's right, a bird wizard.
A bird wizard, not a
bird wizard.
But a wizard.
Yeah, bird wizard.
Drink of choice?
Allergic to alcohol, but if I could drink it, I would take a Manhattan.
You're allergic to alcohol. That is like a curse. I don't know what I would do. Oh my God.
Smoke a lot of weed. That's probably what you would do.
There you go. Amen.
Don't ask me how I know. Okay.
I like it. And I love a good Manhattan too.
Yeah.
Instrument you wish you played?
Well, unfortunately, I broke my wrist when I was a child, and I can't turn my wrist all the way around. So I wish I could play the guitar.
Wow, that is interesting.
I know, it sucks.
Man. Favorite city?
LA.
Guilty pleasure food?
Guilty pleasure food? Probably chocolate chip cookie dough.
Oh, yeah. Raw.
Good, huh?
The dough itself. Yeah.
The dough, yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good.
And musical guilty pleasure. Well, who's your Debbie Gibson?
Who is my musical guilty pleasure? I mean, I like pop music. I mean, I'm kind of like, when I would DJ, I would never DJ pop, but I kind of like pop music. So in a way, I guess that's my guilty pleasure. Like, I loved WAP. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like the #1 song. So I don't know if that can be a guilty pleasure.
It's so funny. My young nephews, teenage boys, were like, man, did you check this out? You got to see this. And I'm like, okay, sure. I'm like, oh my God.
I know. It's
raunchy, but then you walk away humming it. You're like, oh man.
I know, right? It's catchy. It's good.
Yeah. And Kristina, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you joining us.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
Be sure to like, follow, share, and comment on Instagram and Facebook.
Being a career musician is more than just gigs and sessions. Are you a career musician? Find out on the Career Musician Podcast, streaming everywhere.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad, yeah, I'm a nomad.
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast, and I am thoroughly stoked to be an official member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Pantheon Podcast Network is the first of its kind as an all-music-based podcast collective. Please be sure to check us out at pantheonpodcast.com for more info.